Hello and welcome to The Breakdown. LPTV's experiment in streaming continues. And we're going to be bringing you The Breakdown with my co-host, Tara Setmeyer, 3 nights a week. We're going to do Mondays. We're going to do Wednesdays. We're going to do Thursdays. So mark your calendar. We may also do days where Donald Trump sets his ass on fire, almost nukes the world, or says something insanely dumb, or there's a debate. So we're going to be with you on these Monday, Wednesday, Thursday shows pretty regularly now. We've had a tremendous response to the LPTV streaming we've done so far. And it has been a terrific honor how much y'all have responded to it and how much you keep asking for more. So there must be a market for it. So here we are. Whatever insanity pops up between now and November, we're going to be here to cover it with and for you. Well, I'm Rick Wilson, and Tara Setmeyer is also with me. We are also, and Tara, by the way, had the very good sense last week to be the hell out of Dodge on vacation, which I admire her for tremendously. That is damn solid judgment, my friend. It's damn solid judgment.
I had a combination of anniversary and birthday, so it's kind of a palooza effect for the week. Believe me, I wouldn't normally take vacation in the middle of all this chaos, but I needed to recharge since we have less than 50 days to go in this madness. So I'm back and ready to go.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, Tara, why don't you lead us out on the craziness of the last couple days?
Well, I think that even when I'm on vacation, I'm not really on vacation. As long as I have a Wi-Fi signal, I know what's going on. And watching what was happening during the last week between the Atlantic article, the Woodward book, so this craziness about the election, it's just really been quite fascinating and alarming. But I think we have a recap. Meanwhile, while I was on vacation, this is what I kind of sort of missed.
Meanwhile, at Trump's White House lair, a flailing president begins to hatch a devious election plot.
The president did indeed make disparaging comments about American soldiers who died in World War I. During this visit to France, Trump said, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers."
President Trump told Bob Woodward back in February that he believed COVID-19 was much more deadly than the seasonal flu.
It goes through air, Bob. This is deadly stuff.
CBS News Battleground Tracker shows Biden with a 10-point lead among likely voters.
Bad news for President Trump. He's been burning all this cash.
$800 million.
Well, turns out they're broke.
And he's sounding increasingly desperate, perhaps fearful of losing.
It's a rigged election. It's the only way we're going to lose.
The American people will not stand for a stolen election. They want to play war. This is war.
We're going to win 4 more years in the White House. And then after that, we'll negotiate, right? Because we're probably entitled to another 4 after that.
Wow.
No, the hell they're not. They're not entitled to another 4 after that. There will be no negotiation. Good grief. I mean, Trump and company continues to float all of these crazy conspiracies and not so secret plans to steal the election, projecting onto everyone else what they're planning to do. I mean, accusing Biden of not conceding this idea of insurrection and taking up arms. It wasn't just Trump who said this. Trump said this on Fox with Jeanine Pirro using the term insurrection. You had Roger Stone and his ilk on InfoWars talking about martial law and seizing ballots. And then you had Michael Caputo. For people who don't remember, Michael Caputo is another Trump lackey. I know that he's a Florida guy, right, Rick? that Michael
Oh,
Caputo.
he's a New York guy by way of Russia, by way of Florida, right?
Right. Yeah. Which actually checks the box for a few people that are on Trump's
Yeah.
payroll. And Caputo is in the news also because he's the HHS press secretary, and we found out that he'd been messing around with the HHS and CDC press releases about the information on COVID. He has no medical background. He's a Trump crony. He was put there to do exactly what he did, which was to add something political to the CDC's reports, which our medical community around the world relies on. And then he goes on this rant on Facebook on Sunday, this rant all about how the left is arming themselves and how Trump supporters need to go out and stock up on their weapons and talking about sedition. I mean, it's really crazy stuff, but it's all coordinated. This idea of insurrection and taking up arms. This is not by accident. So, yeah, I didn't miss anything.
No. Well, it has been pretty, as you said, maniacal the last few days. And you're absolutely right.
Been.
A guy like Caputo, by the way, belongs in a mental institution, not in government. This sort of talk is so far beyond the boundaries. And you and I both have plenty of experience in Washington. And if anyone spoke like that in any sane administration, they would be out that day. It'd be over. It would be done.
Oh, they would never get hired. Yeah.
Right. Don't let the door hit your
hired.
ass on the way out. Done and done.
True.
Well, speaking of maniacal administrations, we have someone joining us tonight. It is a tremendous honor to have one of the people who was a part of what I like to now consider the second most corrupt administration in American history. It's Mr. John Dean. He is a legendary figure in American history. He was the White House counsel for President Nixon from 1970 to 1973. And during the Watergate scandal, he did the weird thing. I told the truth. Unlike members of the Trump administration who have swallowed this sort of orange omerta, or orange myrta, if you will, if I may make a portmanteau. But John is a fascinating character. He is a repository of an enormous amount of historical and political knowledge about Washington. He has got a brand new book out, which I encourage you to get, called Authoritarian Nightmare. I would like to welcome to the show John Dean. Hey, John, how are you?
Thank you, Rick and Tara. I can't tell you what a good idea this show is. I'm just delighted you all are doing it, and I hope it just keeps thriving.
Well, I appreciate that. We're having the viewer numbers have been tremendous. We're very honored, and we are so glad you joined us tonight. So, John, you were a central figure in again. Well, we can say it this way: in the most important political scandal of the 20th century. I think Donald Trump has set the bar, generally speaking, for the 21st so far. And you once said there is a cancer growing on the presidency of Richard Nixon. What would you describe the situation, the state of the body politic of the Trump administration as?
I think Donald Trump has taken my metaphor to a totally new dimension. I think he is a cancer on the body politic. It's really that serious. If I were in that situation again where I had to warn somebody and use that metaphor, I'd say it's the body politic he's infected, and it's metastasizing fast. We have a chance to deal with it in the election, and that's coming very quickly. 50 days away?
Yes, sir. 50 days and 6 hours. So
absolutely.
It's
go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
Go ahead, Tara. No. You're up.
No. No, I was going to say that
we're new at this.
That's all right. It's remote. It's all remote. Someone like John Dean, you're such a hero and a patriot to a lot of folks, and they were probably a generation of people were reintroduced to you by way of the most recent impeachment. And when many people were hoping that John Bolton would have a John Dean moment and come forward and tell the truth about what he knew during the impeachment. And he decided to be a coward and not do that. But it is a thrill to have you because you have so much institutional knowledge about this from your own personal experience. And watching what's happening in this White House and watching specifically the way that this administration not only handled impeachment. I mean, we're not even talking about that. People forget that a year ago we were gearing up for an impeachment of this president. But now we're faced with COVID, and the consequences of Donald Trump's ineptitude on this have been astronomical and deadly. I want to take a listen to one of the audio clips from the Woodward book, the Woodward interview, and get your reaction to it on the other side of it.
The virus, it's in real people's lives. You know, all those tens of millions of people who don't have jobs, who don't have that income. Listen, I mean, you and I.
Nothing more could have been done. Nothing more could have been done.
Well,
I acted early.
This will be the history that we start the first draft of.
So you think the virus totally supersedes the economy?
Oh, sure. But they're related, as you know.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, little bit. I mean,
more than a little bit. But the economy is doing, look, we're close to a new stock market record.
He doesn't get
it. Right.
Thank
goodness.
goodness
Go ahead, John.
there aren't 200,000 dead people.
Well, first of all, his conflation of the stock market consistently with the economy just doesn't work. A very small percentage of Americans, of course, own stock. They're doing nicely. It's been good for them. Oddly, it's wonderful. It's lasted as long as it has. But I think if you go back to his basic question of his confidence, which this raises and has raised, I've got to tell you all, he has been the most frightening president in my lifetime. And I've now seen a lot of them. I was a little young for Harry Truman, but I have followed and read about them all. And his lack of ability to deal with the government and to deal as a leader is because he has absolutely zero knowledge of Washington. I don't think he even has a good newspaper knowledge of the way it works. So he's stumbling, he's read nothing. You know, he arrives at the White House, they don't even know where the light switches are, and they don't hire people that will tell them. So it doesn't, the first 2-3 years, I was worried that his incompetence would get us in trouble. He's now, that we arrive and he shows that incompetence with the panic, with the virus, with the coronavirus as absolutely a real test of any leader. And he has failed it on every count. So, you know, we're over the learning curve now. He should know what to do. He should have hired people to come in and deal with it. He refuses to do so. His narcissistic need for control and camera time are just overwhelming everything else. So I'm most worried about the fact that there are no checks on the man. As you say, Tara, I was following the impeachment. I was working for CNN, as I believe you were, and we gave commentary on that. And it was stunning. The case was made overwhelmingly by the House. Only one Republican in the Senate, Mitt Romney, would agree to get outside of the partisan vein and vote guilty for a man who conspicuously committed criminal abuse of his office. Right. So we have a spineless Senate. And with that, as no check on the president, it's a dangerous time. It's the most dangerous time in my lifetime that I've seen government in operation or failing to operate properly.
Why on earth would Donald Trump ever decide to do this interview? I mean, we don't need to ask what did the president know, when did he know it? It's all on tape. Why would he do this, John?
Well, I think he believed, you know, a couple people Woodward has done actually survived pretty well in his book. Alan Greenspan, who, as the former head of the Fed, he agreed to do a book with Woodward that became the title of the Maestro, and he came out very well. So Trump might have believed that he could have handled Woodward. He's a con man. He's a salesman. He's been doing this shtick his entire life, but he's now playing in a game he doesn't know anything about. This is different than selling condo apartments, where he obviously has excelled to some degree. But he's playing in a league that Woodward really knows well and was able to penetrate and put the pieces together. And he was obviously, it's his ego. He thought he could handle Woodward, and he couldn't. And he's going to pay the price.
You know, it's so true. It's kind of one of those like moments where you could hear the gears in Trump's head moving, and he's thinking, I'm a great salesman. I'm the master persuader. I can talk Bob Woodward into this. And Washington, D.C. is littered with the bodies of people who thought, oh, I'm going to make Bob Woodward write my first draft of history, which, Woodward says to his people that he wants to interview, this is the first draft of history. And then a lot of times it is, but not in the way the folks that decide to do the interviews think it's going to be. And, it's fascinating to me that Woodward is a through line from Watergate to this very moment in our national political space. And the difference, I think, being that Washington today, I mean, when you were in Washington and Richard Nixon was in the deepest part of the trouble, there were Republicans who went to him, like Howard Baker, and said, it's done. It's over. We're not doing this anymore. But you wouldn't see anything like that in today's Washington, right? I mean, there's nothing even comparable.
No. There is really no Republican Party in existence, anything close to what was there during Nixon's era. Of course, he didn't have a Republican Senate at that time, but he did have Southern Democrats who were his supporters. And when they left him, he realized the game was over. But, This is actually, to me, so much worse than Watergate, because Trump's abuses have been ongoing. They are petty scandals some days. Other days, they're serious scandals. They're so frequent, we can't even tally them all. And unlike Watergate, which was much more than a bungled burglary, it was two bungled burglaries because it involved one while at the White House, this crew of bunglers went out and tried to break in Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office. Right. And later they tried to break in the Democratic National Committee. So this is an ongoing mentality that surfaces and reveals Nixon's thinking. And Nixon, however, did not really order any of those things. He was involved in an illegal cover-up, which he basically admitted by resigning. The tapes pretty much nailed him on that. But this is the obstructions of justice that were in the Mueller report are so much more serious than those that could have been charged against Nixon. Much more serious. And but he's getting a pass on a lot of that, and I don't think history will forget it. And I hope the voters in November don't totally have amnesia about what's happened. This cascading nonfeasance, malfeasance, and misfeasance is just unbelievable, the pace of it.
I just abbreviate it to say all the criming. It's the scope of it, as you said, it ranges from these petty little frauds of holding up cans of Goya beans because a donor said something nice about him, to the obvious degree to which they are trying to monetize this presidency to profit off of it for his hotel chains, to Russia, to God knows what else, to the sons traveling the world making deals, with the nod and the wink of, oh well, we're just here for ourselves, not our famous father. But the scope of it is so sweeping and so ugly. It is hard to keep track of. It's a good observation, John. So
well, one of the things, the reasons I did the book I did is because Trump gets it. People don't realize where he gets his power. His power comes from this base, and the base is really not very well understood. And so I got with a psychologist with whom I'd worked in the past, did a book back over a decade ago called Conservatives Without Conscience, when I noticed authoritarian personalities moving in, particularly on the religious right, and taking over the reins of the Republican Party. It's a book I started because of a conversation with Senator Barry Goldwater, a friend and a man who was very concerned about what was happening to the conservative movement at that time. He unfortunately got ill and there for the end of the book when I finished it. But anyway, it's where I first discovered these authoritarian personalities. Well, when Trump arrived on the scene, and nobody was talking about his authoritarianism, they were talking about his demagoguery, which is the same, but actually a nicer name than authoritarian, I suppose. And they were ignoring where this power comes from. And it comes from people who agree to go along, who want this kind of leader. And that's the core of this book. There's lots of sensation out there. Woodward's book is going to have even probably more sensation. Michael Cohen has given us sensation. Nobody's giving us explanation. And I forecast that would be the problem, that we need to understand it. And who should we be focused on and not focused on at this election? So that's the focus of this book, is who are these players? What are they going to do? And how can they take this stuff and react the way they do? Well, this is their personality. These are pretty much boiled in to these people, and there's very little change they'll ever make. So as I watch these things come up between now and the election, they're not going to change anything. Not going to change a thing.
I think that's exactly
John,
right. There's a Go
yeah.
ahead, Tara.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that in your book, you dedicate several chapters to explaining the characteristics of the people who are susceptible to this type of authoritarianism. And the descriptions, when I was reading it, I could tick off about 10 people who I've encountered who embody every single one of those traits that you talk about. And you specifically say in your book that authoritarianism is on the ballot this November. That's pretty chilling, because a lot of people say, oh, that couldn't happen here, right? How do you convince the average person? Because to a lot of people, authoritarianism goes right over their heads. They think, oh, that's some kind of old Soviet Union, or, Mussolini back in the day. That's not what's going on here. How do you get regular folks to recognize that what is happening right now is an emergence of authoritarianism in a way that has really never threatened our republic the way Donald Trump's presidency has?
Aside from reading my book, the short answer is the short answer is just watch Trump and his behavior. It's clear he's a demagogue, and that was called out very quickly by people like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz. Even Stephen Hawking at one point said, this is a demagogue we're dealing with. And that's a familiar figure in American politics. But I think we all recognize a dominant personality type, which he is. We recognize somebody who's amoral, which he is. We recognize somebody who seeks personal power. Well, that's literally the definition in social science of a social dominator personality. They have other traits. Right. That can be even worse. I mean, they are vengeful, they're pitiless, they're exploitive, they're manipulative, they're dishonest, they cheat to win. All these things I tick off in the book are well established.
Trump
is a poster boy for this kind of behavior and this kind of personality. So how do you get people to recognize it? Well, the people who do not like Trump, people like you and Rick, obviously recognized early on, this isn't a guy I can go along with. This isn't somebody I think embodies the principles of the Republican Party as I knew it. And I think a lot of people have discovered that, who were anybody but Hillary during the last election, and now they've come around and are starting to look at this. What I have noticed, what is most troubling to me, is he's a norm buster, and he just pays no attention to the informal rules of the game. I don't think in many instances he was even aware of them. So he just goes ahead and does whatever he wants. He thinks writing an executive order is the same as enacting a law. Here's a man who arrived in Washington who'd never heard of the filibuster. Oh, why don't you get rid of that so we can get some stuff through since you've got control? I mean, he has no sense of institutional knowledge, so he just keeps rolling. What's going to happen, the way we describe it in the book, is if he gets reelected, what you've got is the equivalent of a 2-year-old in his terrible twos with the keys to the tank and nobody taking him away from him, nobody to control him. And it will be terrifying. Hopefully that won't happen, but there's no assurance. He's got about 35 to 40% locked in of the registered voters. And they're two groups. They're those without a 4-year college education and the religious right. The religious right is the largest constituency. And we explored in the book why they can just dismiss Christian teachings and buy into a man like Donald Trump. It's really quite phenomenal that they can do that.
You know, John, I was thinking back about Watergate earlier when you knew you were coming on the call, and I remember the story about Henry Kissinger basically putting out the word that in Nixon's darkest hour, it's like, hey guys, If he orders you to nuke North Korea, don't do that. So,
Right.
I mean, if people knew how easy it was to launch nuclear weapons as the president, they would never ever sleep, because there's nothing beyond Donald Trump, in my view. Maybe that's a little far on the outer rim of possibility, but he, as an authoritarian, he likes to demonstrate power, even when it breaks norms, even when it hurts the country, even when it hurts society, even when it divides us by race or by region or by class or by ethnicity. That performative nature of authoritarianism, I think, is something that these guys, there's a commonality between all authoritarian figures. And anyone with even a moderate exposure to history looks at Trump, and you can't see anything but a nascent authoritarian on his best day, and lately a lot more than nascent.
Well, Richard Nixon was my first authoritarian president. By the social science definition, I would see maybe 5 presidents who've been authoritarians. John Adams, probably, Andrew Jackson, Woodrow Wilson, Richard Nixon, and now Trump. And those 5 all have a lot of personality traits in common. They are people who desired power. They're very dominating personalities, amoral, often racist and or anti-Semitic, whatever their particular prejudice might be. And this is not a healthy personality for a democracy. And hopefully people will learn the lesson.
The historian James David Barber one time described their personality type as active negative. They were willing to use all the levers of power for very dark outcomes and from very dark motivations. And I think I still look back and I think Nixon was a cataclysm for the presidency, but it's still like a warm-up act for what we're seeing right now, especially because Richard Nixon never had social media. Richard Nixon didn't have a single television network dedicated 24 hours a day to elevating him and getting him out of trouble. So it is a hell of a moment. I think we have. Do we have another element of the Woodward interview? Can we roll that?
I get along very well with Erdogan, even though you're not supposed to, because everyone says what a horrible guy. But for me, it works out good. It's funny that the relationships I have. The tougher and meaner they are, the better I get along with them. You'll explain that to me someday, okay? But maybe it's not a bad thing. The easy ones are the ones I maybe don't like as much or don't get along with as much.
I like the pictures you have behind the videos. That's a wannabe dictator talking about how he's one of the tough guys. He can talk mean and tough to these guys. He's in their club. This is to impress himself as well as his followers, that he thinks he has their respect. I think he's being used by several of them to their ends, and he just wants to be in the club so badly that he doesn't know they're laughing at him behind his back, because he's not as they might say, a made man in the mafia.
No. He wishes.
He wishes.
He does. Yeah. He wishes, but he's not.
We had we had an alternative cover for the Woodward book done up by our crew, because it's more what he really is than what Woodward portrayed him as. Can we pull that up, guys?
I like that.
It's the sequel. It's the sequel.
Yes, it's the real untold story. Well, John, you said that Trump's the problem, and the U.S. is not going to recover till he's gone. How long does it take for an American, for the populace to metabolize the fact that their president is corrupt and a crook?
It didn't go down quickly for Nixon. He won an overwhelming re-election victory in his after Watergate had happened in '72, and he doesn't really get removed. Watergate really runs almost 1,000 days before the end game is played out. 925 from break-in to Nixon's resignation, but it goes on a little bit beyond that, because you have the trial of his top advisors, his chief of staff and his top domestic advisor and his former attorney general all get convicted on January 1 of 1975 by a jury
Mm-hmm.
of their peers. And what's more interesting, Rick, is the aftermath. It took about a decade. There was something called Watergate, post-Watergate morality. And if Trump is
Mm-hmm.
removed, already there are people developing thinking about this as what do we have to do to clean this up and prevent this from happening again. Now, I even hate to let my head go there because it's so important to think about how to get rid of him and to understand what we're getting rid of, to think about how to deal with the aftermath. But it will be protracted and it will come eventually. But if he's reelected, it's Katie bar the door. This will become a standard program every day that you'll have to do to keep the opposition thinking. And what I love about the way as I was mentioning before we went on the air, is your title that everything Trump touches dies. I have never been able to get that out of my head and watch it actually come true is the more remarkable thing. And he is just out there talking too much, and we're going to watch it wither and die. Hopefully sooner rather than later, though.
Well,
Hopefully
not if
sooner
we
rather
have
than later.
anything to do with it.
That's
Not if we have
exactly
anything to
right.
do with it. We're not going to let Donald Trump destroy our democracy. And, there are many of us out there and people who support what we're doing, patriots like you, John, who have, made good on your mistakes and come back and really educated people about warning people about not making the mistakes that were made back under Nixon. And it was a really informative book. So, John, thank you so much, John Dean, for joining us. Buy his book, read it, Authoritarian Nightmare. It is so timely, and you will really get a robust understanding of the psychology behind Trump supporters and how we got here and why 63 million Americans voted for this guy and, how we can combat it. So, John Dean, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Continue
Hope you come back with us sometime.
I'd love that. Thank you.
All right, great. So let's turn our attention, folks, to the ongoing Grand Theft 2020. We've got our asset that we put up for that as a general rule. It's very old-fashioned, but I like it. So we'll throw up the Grand Theft 2020 asset. Who knows? There we go. We've got Ivanka with her Goya can. We've got Don. It works for me, guys. We are going to have to redo one as Grand Theft Auto 5, but that's another story for another day. But as we like to do for you folks on the LPTV Hour, we're going to premiere a new ad for you that we've brought out today. It is called Don the Con. This is a message to Donald Trump that he's not going to like.
Donald the Con got con. All those unexpected expenses and items that went over budget. You really don't get what they did, do you, Donald? The beach houses, the fancy cars. It starts with a little falling off the truck and then more falls off, and pretty soon that $800 million you raised did nothing but make a lot of people rich and put you in a big hole. What can you do? Call your own campaign crooks? You hired them. You or that idiot Jared Kushner. You really don't think he's in on the con, Donald? Nobody has ever spent almost $1 billion to go down 10 points. You really have to work at that. But when you hire nothing but the best, they can get it done. Donald Trump. Today, he's just a sucker who got played. On November 3rd, he'll be the biggest loser, sucker in American history. Don the Con got con. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Well, that was fun, and more to come, Don. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. So that is today's
Rick,
ad.
you know what? Rick, you have to explain to people why we do this, because I think sometimes people don't realize why we poke so much fun at Donald Trump and the whole Brad Parscale and the money spending and all of that. Why this gets under Donald Trump's skin. And it's because he can't stand the idea of anyone taking advantage of him, because he knows everything about everything. And he doesn't like the idea that other people use him to make money off of him. Yet he surrounds himself with nothing but freaking grifters who use him to make money off of him. So, that's part of the genius behind this, because it's just needling him in his weak spots to drive him crazy, which you specialize in, Rick Wilson.
We've talked Donald Trump basically into firing his campaign manager this year, walking up and down a ramp to prove he can do it, drinking water to prove he can do it, and constantly obsessing about what we're saying, not about campaigning against Joe Biden. And, a lot of folks, they look at what we're doing and they see the sort of top of the iceberg that's sticking out of the water, the flashy viral ads, the stuff that messes with Donald Trump's headspace. All that's very necessary. That stuff is very much part of our strategic overview. Every time we rattle Donald Trump and take him off agenda for even an hour, it's a benefit to the Biden campaign. It helps them move forward. It's a moment where they're not getting nuked. And every time we do something like this, Donald Trump sends the furies of hell to the campaign, and they start asking questions, because guys like Pascal were skimming hundreds of millions of dollars off this campaign.
So much money.
They were dumping it. Yep. They were dumping it into the pockets of girlfriends and wives. They're going in all these different directions with these consultants who are there for no reason other than to keep them quiet. The whole thing is this giant pyramid of grift. And every time we bring up money, Donald Trump realizes this is the last rodeo. You either win or it's all done. So they're trying to milk this thing for all they can inside Trump world, and calling attention to it really makes him lose his damn mind. So we will keep pressing on that. And, again, folks, there's an iceberg effect to the Lincoln Project. Up on the top, you see the snow, you see the flash. Below the water is what's going to tear a giant hole in the Trump-tanic. That's our voter profiling and voter modeling operation. That's our voter outreach program. Those are the ads that we're running in the states that you don't necessarily see every day. But, we're doing things in the states that we know are moving numbers, and in demographic groups that are moving numbers that are going to help us hit that margin we need of former Republicans, soft Republicans, and independents in certain key electoral college states. So you'll keep seeing all the fun stuff, but just always know there's a whole deadly machine underneath the waterline.
Yes.
And I won't call it a Death Star because that was Brad being arrogant. We're just extremely difficult, problematic iceberg.
We're the Rebel Alliance. We're the good guys.
We are the
funny
good
thing
guys.
is, also, we're the good guys here. They're the Death Star. Joe Biden raised $364 million in the month of August. That is record-setting. That is an astronomical amount of money. One thing that you will never have to worry about with the Biden campaign is that they're going to waste their money on a bunch of BS and girlfriends and, enriching consultants so they can go and, drive Ferraris. That is what Donald Trump's campaign has done. And with all of his bitching and complaining about America being taken advantage and how his followers have been taken advantage of and not
ripped
heard
off.
of, he is taking advantage, ripped off. He's the one that is ripping off his supporters when they are giving this money to the campaign and it's being squandered. $800 million has been squandered for Donald Trump to be down, double digits. It's pretty remarkable, the cognitive dissonance that goes on with Trump supporters in this campaign. It's right in front of them, but
as Connor, one of our guys in the political shop, just tweeted a little while ago, we've moved more voters away from Trump and to Biden, spending $10 million, than Donald Trump has moved from Biden to Trump, spending $800 million. The return on investment, folks, is not, it's that scene in The Dark Knight where the Joker just makes a pyramid of money and sets it on fire for fun. That's pretty much where it's at. So.
Yep. Because he doesn't care, because it's not his money, it's other people's money, which is how he's operated his entire business career, which is why he went bankrupt multiple times.
Correct.
So there's that.
Amazing. Well, what else is in the news today, Tara?
Oh, let's see. There's a couple things, this and that. We have a segment here called Rapid Response. So let's cue it up with our first rapid response topic.
All right. The first rapid response item of the night is the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's bring that up. The Nobel Peace Prize. It is so on brand for these morons to spell this wrong. It's the simplest thing in America. He was nominated by a far-right guy in Norway for the Nobel Peace Prize. He will not receive the Nobel or Nobel Peace Prize. He's basically like maybe in the running for a Razzie, but that's about it. Anybody can get, by the way, anybody. I'm going to nominate you, Tara, for Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Peace Prize. One of the two.
Thank you. Yeah, that's anyone can nominate you for a Nobel Peace Prize. And this has happened twice before. This isn't the first time. There were two other fraudulent wacko nominations for Donald Trump. And the thing about this is that because he's such a malignant narcissist, he has to have this attention. Because first of all, he's obsessed with the fact that President Obama won a Nobel Peace Prize. Anything that Obama did, Donald Trump has to try to counter or diminish. Or say, look, I did it too. So that's the main reason. It's because Obama got one. And, we can argue whether he deserved it or not, but he certainly deserved it more than Donald Trump. And the other part about this is that the people around him, they are part of this whole ego stroking. Peter Navarro, the White House economic advisor, was on CNN with my colleague Jake Tapper on Sunday. And they were talking about coronavirus and other things, and he, in the middle of the interview, a complete non sequitur, he's like, and by the way, Donald Trump was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Seriously? We're supposed to honestly take you seriously with this? I mean, it's so sad and pathetic watching people debase themselves like this for the Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump. Get the hell out of here.
Insane.
You gotta be kidding.
Get the F out of here. All right, let's go to rapid response item number 2. It's our favorite aficionado of Bolivian marching powder, Donald Trump Jr.
I want my commander-in-chief to be able to be calm under pressure. I want him to not exert hysteria to the American people and cause a panic. That doesn't mean he's not dealing with it sincerely or severely, but, that's the reality. Bob Woodward is a couple of weeks before an election. He's got to crank out another book. He was right once 40 years ago, and he's carried it that way ever since.
There's nothing about Don Jr. that a weekend detox wouldn't cure. That guy, I mean, first off, every time I see him, he's wired out of his damn mind. Secondly, the combination of the slick back hair product, the polo shirt, and the hyperactivity, it's like every 1980s movie villain. He's just like, he's the bad senior in high school in a John Hughes movie. It's unbelievable.
That ends up getting his ass kicked at the end. Right? They always end up losing, which is awesome. It's what made the 80s awesome.
Right. The 80s had an ethos.
Yes, it did. And Donald Trump Jr. is just such a cautionary tale in that respect. I don't know who's worse, him or that Jesse Waters. The two of them together is like double. Well, I was going to use a term, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pull Biden and not use the term.
You're gonna throttle it back. Throttle it back.
Yeah. And I lost my train of thought now. It was so
Leave
good.
the excess to me.
But, yes, I shall. The idea of calm, right? He's trying to justify that we want a president he's not going to incite panic and all that. There was nothing calm about that presentation. He was completely out of control. And Donald Trump does nothing but incite chaos constantly. This is what he thrives off of. For God's sakes, he called Joe Biden a destroyer of our culture and warned that people are going to come and loot and burn your neighborhood and only he can fix it. That sounds like a lot of calm to me. You don't want people to panic except when you want them to panic. Makes no sense.
The guy who screams about Antifa every day, the Antifa army coming to burn down your suburb and MS-13 moving in next door is not exactly the paragon of calm. All right, for our next segment, I would like to say QAnon's had a lot of setbacks lately. They discovered that one of its major proponents and promoters was in fact a guy who is a senior vice president at Citicorp in New York. He's under a little bit of Jason Galinas. A little bit of trouble, but I will say this: I've got to be fair. QAnon is about to achieve a small victory in the great state of Georgia. there is a Democratic candidate named Kevin Van Osdol who is leaving the race. This is going to leave QAnon enthusiast and complete wackadoo Marjorie Taylor Greene as the nominee and therefore the victor in a race with no other opposition for a congressional seat in the great state of Georgia. So QAnon has their first out, open, completely in the daylight, where we go one, we go stupid person who will be a congressman this January. And I'm really looking forward to Kevin McCarthy assigning her to the Intelligence Committee. That would be a fantastic move on his part.
Rick, how did we get here with these Looney Tunes? These people are completely out of their minds. And they not only do they believe wacky stuff, but it's dangerous stuff. And it is potentially violent stuff. Like, people forget. They think, oh, QAnon is just, the tinfoil hat crowd. No, it's so much more nefarious than that. And the idea that someone like this who thinks that 9/11 was a hit job, she's a 9/11 truther. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Republicans had a hissy fit anytime there was anyone that questioned anything about 9/11. My Van Jones got in trouble because he made some comments about 9/11 way back in the day, which basically helped to push him out of the White House in the Obama administration 11 years ago. The Republicans are going to tolerate this. They're going to tolerate someone that thinks that there is a grand conspiracy, a deep state within our government that worships Satan and drinks the blood of children and child sex trafficking. Like, this is what these crazy people believe. Pizzagate, the guy who went and shut up a pizza place in DC a couple of years ago did so because he was listening to the QAnon conspiracy stuff. It is completely batshit crazy. And this person is now going to, unopposed, win a seat in our Congress. I just don't know how.
I'm telling you, you watch Kevin McCarthy. He will name her to committees. A responsible Republican leader, minority leader, because they're not going to win the House back under any circumstances, would say this person is insane. This person does not believe the things the Republican Party believes in. She will not be seated on any committees. She will be allowed to vote
on any committee.
But that is all.
That's right.
But or they put her
which
on
they have the ability to do.
Committee. Of course, they've done it before. They took Steve King off committees because he was a cuckoo racist. This woman is an insane person. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. This woman is insane. This set of beliefs requires that you be disconnected from reality in the most fundamental way. She is batshit. There is no debating about it. So welcome, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to the U.S. Congress. Come on down and bring your conspiracy with you.
Well, she didn't get there by herself.
Nope, she did not.
She didn't get there by herself. People voted her. People voted for her. So what is happening down in some of these congressional districts that someone like that gets voted into office? That's what worries me.
Especially in Georgia. Especially in Georgia, redistricting has been so heavily engaged and engineered that she's in a safe. I mean, that's a Republican plus 20 seat, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So there's no way.
Yeah.
It's up there, right? It's to the point where I pay attention to the narrow ones, like the +3s, +4s in either direction. I don't really watch the seats that are totally safe.
+15. Yeah.
Right. And so she's going to be in Congress, and that is on the Republican Party. It is on Ronna McDaniel. It is on Kevin McCarthy. It is on Donald Trump, who plays footsie with these people. It is on Dan Scavino, who is the White House coordinator with the QAnon idiots, who feeds them little things all the time. And it is on these Republican conspiracy nuts from 2016 who were promoting Pizzagate, like Mike Cernovich and Jack Posobiec and all these cuckoos who were out there trying to say Hillary Clinton is a cannibal child molester. Well, and then the thing got out of control, and it grew and grew and has become a cult. It is a danger to this country. And unfortunately, it is a danger that Donald Trump tolerates because as he says, well, I hear they like me, therefore it's okay. I know that's more Zoolander than Trump, people, but I'm working on
it. Well, depends on what day it is, right? How Trump sounds. Kind of sounds a little Zoolander sometimes when he's slurring his words. But just know that QAnon is more of a domestic terror threat than Antifa ever has been.
Yep.
and our domestic intelligence services recognize that.
Yeah. The QAnon and white supremacists are a much more proximate danger to this country than Antifa. And as much as you guys want to make Antifa into a thing, it's not that thing. So with that, our president today took a trip out to the blazing hellscape. He likes to describe a lot of America as a hellscape of fiery buildings being burned to the ground by Antifa. But there are 3 states that are right now a fiery hellscape being burned to the ground by, fire. And that is California, Oregon, and Washington State. But the president decided he would come down to California today after a quick visit to Nevada and a quick visit to Arizona. He had a rally in the vital Elko-Reno corridor in northern Arizona. That's a joke, people, on the I-4 corridor. But he then did an event in California where state officials were saying to him, Mr. President, we need to take this seriously. The changes in the climate are causing these things. And he just looked at the guy deadpan and said, it'll get cooler. It'll start to get cooler. And the reaction in the room was just stunned. And he said, science doesn't know. Well, apparently science may know a little bit, Don, but call me crazy. Well, we also had some video
no, science doesn't know. Of course science doesn't know, because he has a big enough brain. His brain is bigger than science. Come on, people.
It's going to be like
science.
My climate advisor, Dr. Lysenko, is telling... That's a Russia joke for you, folks. That's a bonus for two obscure jokes in one night. You're welcome, America. Okay, let's go ahead and show some of our assets from the trip out west, because I think it really is worthwhile.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
Whoops. There we go.
From our perspective, there is amazing partnership
when
on
Trump
the ground, and there needs to be.
Just watch.
As the governor said, we've had temperatures explode this summer. You may have learned that we broke a world record in the Death Valley, 130 degrees. But even in Greater LA, 120
he gave science personality.
We're seeing this warming trend make our summers warmer, but also our winters warmer as well. So I think one area of mutual agreement and priority is vegetation management. But I think we want to work with you to really recognize the changing climate and what it means to our forests.
We're laughing
and
about this,
work
right? But
with
it's
that
actually
science.
really, really
serious.
Because this is the way Donald Trump approaches things, right? This is how he approaches things. People are losing their homes, they're losing their lives. Like, wildfire season in California is a serious thing. When I worked for the congressman in California, the Santa Ana winds and this time of year was always, it's kind of like hurricane season on the East Coast. Wildfire season on the West Coast is something that sometimes you just can't control. And it's horrible. And he's talking about, you got to sweep the forest, he's talking about deforestation and those types of mitigation things, but he's so simplistic with it and has zero concept of what's involved to mitigate these things. And it goes back to even what Miles Taylor, who was the former DHS Secretary, Chief of Staff, who I'm hoping we get on the show soon. Miles Taylor talked about how he's great. I'm actually interviewing him on my podcast this week, and I'm excited about it because he was in the room literally when a lot of Donald Trump's antics happened and when he tried to, direct them to do illegal things. But when the Paradise, California fires happened, where that town was basically burned to the ground, and those people lost everything, and Trump was there, he was actually told the FEMA director to cut off funds to these people because they weren't his people, because they didn't vote for him. This is pathological cruelty. The cruelty is the point, right? And this is another example where he just doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about this because it doesn't affect his people. California's not his people.
Right.
It's sick.
It's something. Well, I think we've got a couple other small things from the trip out west, and then we'll wrap up the evening.
Yes.
So
we'll
let's see
lighten
what
it
else
up
we've
again.
got here. Yeah, right.
Why are you guys not wearing masks?
I have one with me. It's my prerogative.
Yeah. But why not wear one to stay safe?
I have a hard time understanding people when they talk, so that's why I don't wear it.
But you can hear me right now?
I can hear you.
Sure. Tell me, why are you not wearing your mask?
Because there's no COVID. It's a fake pandemic created to destroy the United States of America.
But the president said to Bob Woodward that there is a virus, the coronavirus, and that it is deadly.
That's his opinion. The truth is that the CDC said there's only less than 10,000 people die from COVID. The other 190,000 have 2.6 or 2.8 other mortalities.
Does it worry you guys at all to be in this crowded space with all these?
I'm not afraid. The good Lord takes care of me. If I die, I die. We got to get this country moving.
Well, I do want to say there may have been some trolling going on. Can we bring up the picture of the bearded guy at that rally? Can we bring up that asset? Oh, there he is. Now, let's see side by side. Let's see the other one. Oh, it could have been Steve Schmidt trolling.
Imagine.
I love it.
It's so absurd. It's so absurd that you would think it was a parody.
You see somebody like that, and right. It's like, come on, bro. You've got to be kidding me. There's no, you can't really believe that, and yet,
but he
200,000 dead people.
He does. Right.
It doesn't matter. Comodalities.
Yeah, instead of comorbidities, yeah. And the other guy was my prerogative. Yeah, okay. I think that the best part of those clips really was the background music. I was the guy talking about the good Lord is going to protect me with Ave Maria going on in the background. Like you couldn't script this absurdity any better. But the scary part about this is that these people are super spreaders, so they don't give a damn and they're selfish. And that's how you end up with almost 200,000 Americans dead, because you have a president that decided that he wasn't going to take this seriously. He told us by way of the Woodward tapes that he knew how serious this was. And frankly, I have to admit that I was shocked at how well versed he was in the virus and what was going on at the time. I was actually kind of shocked about that, but he really did have a pretty firm understanding of what was going on, which makes it even more nefarious that he consciously chose to deceive the American people. And Trump lied and people died. And that's where we are.
Stupid can be forgivable, evil cannot. We've got one more clip, folks, just so you know that all Trump voters are completely independent thinkers and they're not part of a cult in any way whatsoever. We're going to roll that, and then we will wrap up for the evening with one last little word from Tara after we wrap up with that clip.
Have you ever dreamt of running through a supermarket, grabbing everything you want?
I wish somebody would have tripped.
Live that dream by playing along with today's contestants on Canada's hottest new game show, Supermarket Sweep. Grab a cup of your favorite blend of Naval coffee and test your shopping skills with our eager contestants as they try to win cash and other fabulous prizes on the one and only Supermarket Sweep.
Our production team has a hell of a lot of fun with this. We're bringing back the Meanwhile in Trump Mansion clip again, guys. I love that one. So, well, folks, we're going to wrap it up. Tara, let me send it out to you, and then I'll wrap up.
Yes. Oh, man. Every time I've seen that clip, I just think the road to destruction is wide. These people, my gosh, we've got to put an end to this. We've got to put an end to this November 3rd. But anyway, thank you guys for spending your time with us this evening. As Rick mentioned in the beginning, this is our live TV, live streaming experiment, and you can catch us on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern live. And you can always watch the re-air if you can't make it live. Over there, subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Lincoln Project YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us everywhere. And come hang out and spend some time with us as we have 49 days to go in the election, but we will be here Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Yes. And of course, as Rick said, pending on any other crazy things, and if Donald Trump sets his ass on fire, we'll come live and make sure that we talk about it and make fun of him in the process. Big thank you to John Dean, our guest tonight. Please check out his book, Authoritarian Nightmare. We're living it every day. But it's an excellent book, and we appreciate him coming and spending time with us. Rick, take us out.
Folks, on the way out, we're going to roll a brief clip from our latest podcast. Another thing you should subscribe to. People seem to like it. Seems to be doing very well on the Apple charts and everything else. It's the Lincoln Project podcast, hosted by Ron Steslow, our digital director. This clip features Ann Applebaum, and we'll let that roll out and wish you a good night, and we'll see you again on Wednesday.
You've got 5 minutes in a room with Donald Trump. You have an opportunity to say something to him. What do you say?
I have mentally rehearsed this so many times. Mr. President, my son Joel took an oath, just as you did. He vowed as a pararescue combat rescue officer to put his life and safety second to those he set out to rescue, living the motto, "These things we do that others may live." You, sir, have done the exact opposite. Rather than giving selfless service, you have demonstrated self-centered, selfish service. You have gained personally while the American people have lost jobs, safety, environmental stability, and their lives because you, sir, have put yourself and your interests above all else. Joel graduated from what the military calls Superman school, yet he remained humble. You have placed yourself on a pedestal built of lies, conceit, and greed. I wish I could trade places with my son so he could help vote you out of office.